Just imagine Stan Lee created Catwoman. It's a trip. From 2001 to 2002, DC ran a series of stories wherein Marvel heavyweight Stan Lee recreated a bunch of their core characters, alongside some of the most popular artists of the time. This led to some interesting comics, and today we're going to be taking a look at Catwoman. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and let's take a look at what Stan Lee's Catwoman looks like. Each of these comics starts off with a letter, basically designed to assuage concerns that this is some kind of attack on the characters. Basically, they're trying to make it quite clear that this isn't meant to be a dig, but rather more of a thought exercise. The letter reads, "Hi, true believers. I want to emphasize that this project is intended as a heartfelt tribute to the talented artists and writers who have created DC's greatest heroes. Anybody can come along later on after the hard work has been done and write a different version of some famous feature. Please don't think for 1 minute that this is an attempt to improve on any of the truly great characters that have become legendary throughout the world. The new versions in this series are merely a fun exercise, a chance to work with some of the best artists in comicdom, a chance no writer could refuse. So I hope you enjoy this somewhat different look at a few of your favorite heroes, and remember, the version you're about to read owes its very existence to the true masterworks that came before it. Excelsior." So of course, miles will vary as to whether or not people take this letter as its word, but it's nice that it's there. And if this is meant to be taken as a fun exercise, it's very interesting to explore, compare, contrast the different versions. See the changes and the potential whys. Thought exercise time. This is especially interesting with some of DC's characters because some of them are so old, and Catwoman is one of those. She dates back to the Golden Age. So she predates the Marvel overseen by Lee, post-Timely, post-Atlas. And Catwoman is also a character who has evolved a fair bit over the years. Catwoman debuted in Batman #1 in 1940, going at first by the Cat. She had a bit of a femme fatale energy, and even though she briefly donned a full-on cat head for a bit, it was part of her costume, the cat elements were more linked to theft and ties to female sensuality than literal cats. Even though as time would go on, she would also begin to have a lot of cats as pets. She became a staple of Batman's rogues gallery, even if she was shelved for years at the start of the Silver Age because of the Comics Code. She's also one of Batman's most recognizable love interests. She's been a villain, she's been an anti-hero, she's just been around. She's a staple. So how does one go about approaching that and reinventing her? Stan Lee's Catwoman, which has art by Chris Bachalo, inks by Richard Friend, and colors by Alex Sinclair, positions Catwoman directly as a hero. Whereas over at DC Comics, she can vary. She tends to be more on the heroic side, but there's still an element of theft and stuff that can be played with. This comic's villain is a character called the Flesh Crawler, and he's who the comic opens with. Despite this incredibly ominous name and his ability to make people's flesh, well, crawl, he wants to rob a bank. He's also in a space suit, which they never fully elaborate upon. Is he a puddle of goo? I wanted to know. The comic did not tell me. Maybe it was the only costume left when he was choosing his villain look. Creepy astronaut. Now this heist depends upon his goons being able to use a model who's doing a photo shoot at the bank to get inside. This model is Joanie Jordan, and she is going to be our Catwoman. And also this little detail that's there just cuz, but her father is Hal Jordan. Why would Hal Jordan do this? Joanie may be a model, but she doesn't love it. Joanie's entire intro is complaining. "I don't know why I ever became a model. Sure, the pay is great, but it's also phony. Like tonight, for instance, I got a pose at the Fifth Federal Bank. They want to show that glamorous models bank there. Thing is, I've never even set foot inside the place. I don't need brains to be a model. All that matters is my looks. And once they're gone, it'll be bye-bye Joanie. I feel like I'm stuck in a shallow, empty life. It's all so meaningless. It's so totally unreal. Oh, what's bugging me? I gotta snap out of this mood. I'm young, healthy, earning a bundle. Things could be a lot worse for Inspector Jordan's daughter, Joanie. She could have exposition syndrome. I don't need brains to be a model. Many a model would disagree. It takes a lot of things to be a model. Looks is one of them, an important key part, but not the only thing." Now, Joanie is not just monologuing. She'll do that later. She is speaking to her cat. Her cat is named Ebony. Also, there's this mysterious bunch of green clouds that are causing a storm. Never good. Green is the color of doom in the Marvel universe. Literally. Now, the goons just burst into her apartment. No couth, no poise. They just crash in saying that they need her to go model at the bank, and she's gonna get them in, and they're gonna pretend to be her fashion designers. She'll have to say the theme is Matrix chic. The thing with this story is that it takes a lot of suspending, because in ways it's written like a story from an earlier era, but with art from the early aughts, in the sense that there are lots of details surrounding jobs or the way things work that the reader is just meant to go with and not extend any of their either own knowledge or think about it too much. There are certain details, such as if this were a professional shoot, there would be a whole contingent of people and handlers, and for something of this profile, even some press. there would definitely already be designers, or at the very least people aware of what the shoots should be there, who would know that these people were not meant to be there. In general, the modeling career is being used more as a frame than in a way that utilizes its true intricacies to drive things. One could argue that maybe depending upon how busy they could slip, because maybe not everybody would know everybody, but it's again the kind of thing where it's just meant to be taken at face value and not truly examined, which leads to a bit of a disconnect on the realism front, but it lands perfectly well in a 90s action movie form of logic type way, where it's more meant to be there to form the broad strokes, to kind of give an energy, a kind of vibe to the environment. However, if one stops to think about things, it's possible that cracks could begin to appear. Now this plan, the Joanie version at least, will never get to be tested, which is a good thing because it had some other problems. But there'll be a crowd. People will see you. After the robbery, you can be identified. Only if anyone's left alive to do the identifying. The flesh crawler needs better plans and better help. Now the cat leaps into action, scratching one of these goons, which means that Joanie can escape temporarily. But as she does, as she flees, she is struck by green lightning, and so Joanie becomes the Flash, no way her father, and so Joanie becomes Green Lantern. I wish. Joanie becomes Catwoman. The green lightning connects her to the cat somehow. It's basically the Spider-Man origin logic, only instead of it being a spider that's been infused with radiation, it's her and the cat getting struck by this lightning. Joanie is instantly mutated and now has cat-like abilities. It was after the green lightning bolt hit me. I was able to see in the dark like a cat, and just like Ebony can, I extended my claws. But they're much longer than hers. I feel stronger, faster, more alert, every nerve tingling, my senses all on edge, since I know I'm not hallucinating. You do? There's only one answer. That green lightning bolt striking Ebony and me at the same time, it's given me the powers of a cat. The Lady Deathstrike claws are pretty sweet. This version of Catwoman versus Wolverine, when she can retract the claws, she will not be truly inconvenienced by these powers. Instead, they're going to give her a taste of that sense of a more fulfilled life, maybe, allegedly. Now, since she got these cat powers, what about Ebony? What does Ebony get out of this? Now, Joanie claims her and Ebony have a kind of near telepathic connection, but nothing is really done with that in this story. And so it comes across like the cat didn't get any benefits. There's no human mind now in the form of the cat. That would have been really cool if the Catwoman was Ebony, because now with a human mind able to go out and stop crime, maybe they could have kept it that Joanie was a bit on the more shallow, vapid side, but she needed her to go and be her giant claws of justice. I have a hunch she'll be more than just my pet from now on. In some strange way, we'll be more like partners. Not in this issue, you won't. Now, Joanie is able to take out the goons in her apartment, pushes one off the balcony, and this incident makes her even more famous. Just the fact that she was robbed and was able to save herself. And so at this point, the comic takes some time to introduce some of the supporting players. Her sleazy boss, Mr. Drake, a sort of maybe love interest in a photographer named Ben, and a rival jealous model in Raven Rodell. The more significant players get that sweet alliteration name. They're playing with the agency being a little trashy in terms of how it negotiates deals and its internal politics. And because of that, it's pretty uncomfortable when Joan doesn't bat an eye when Ben pawns off their boss's flirtatious attempts on her rival Raven after Raven tries to get Ben to take her to dinner after he'd asked Joan, but Joan said no. Bad vibes. This sequence also sets up the idea that Joan's claws come out literally when she gets upset, because she's having this catty exchange with Raven when this happens. This moment is the sole one where the powers will extend more into the metaphorical, extend beyond just that she got them from a cat, but they'll be more based in her personality. But this is a one-off kind of thing. She doesn't struggle with controlling the powers at any point later on. She also doesn't have any of the other things impact her, like the heightened senses or reflexes. She doesn't have any uncomfortable cat-like urges. So the comic introduces this concept, but doesn't really play with it or build it up, which could have been something that would have made her feel a bit more cat-like. However, the comic does take a bit more time to build her out in other ways. Now it's time for more backstory. I can't wait to tell Dad what happened to me. He always thought modeling was such a useless career. I know in his heart of hearts he wished I'd taken up police work. He'll be so thrilled when he sees what I'm now able to do. Now she's Witchblade. Also, the magazine that she's on, it's called Timely. That's a reference to Timely Comics, which then became Atlas, which then became Marvel. Now this reminiscing is there to set up a conflict with her father. The thing is, it kind of contradicts her own past musings, because she wasn't thrilled with being a model either. But here she's more satisfied and dreaming of more fame. The thing is, these things don't need to contradict, but they're not connected. The reader kind of needs to make that leap. And so she's kind of left in this unmoored status of what does she she really want? It's not the kind of thing where it would have needed to be outright stated, but the thread is so loose. Well, with some mild tweaks, it could all be tightened up. Even a little line in her earlier monologue, like maybe daddy was right or something like that, giving her more of an aura of a successful model growing bored with her career, seeking more, starting to wonder if maybe her father was right and she was meant for more, then gaining powers that could give her an edge not only in the career she's chosen, but now open up this other door to her that she hadn't fully explored. A whole will she choose this new lifestyle over her old one kind of thing. Now her father, Inspector Hal Jordan, thinks that all of this is disgusting. Heroes are disgusting. They make cops look bad, and even though he still hates her main job, at least she's not a filthy superheroine. You know something, even though I think modeling's a waste of time, I'm glad you're a model instead of one of those rotten superheroines. Oh no, daddy issues. Except not really, you'll see. Joanie liked kicking butt, and so she's gonna keep doing it. She's a bit sad that she can't tell her father about her plans because she was gonna let him in on it, but so that is there to establish the traditional secret identity thing. The whole this is why she has to keep it a secret, and that means it's costume making time and also wig lifetime. Minus the giant claws, this costume is very similar to the green costume she wore very briefly that took on elements from the Batman 66 TV series in 1967, and it was also one that was briefly used in the animated cartoon. It's a good look and tried and true. It's also got distressed fashion holes. She goes on and on about her powers here, which have also got some Spider-Man-esque elements in that they're taking some liberties in what it means to have the powers of a cat. She talks about how her limbs are made of rubber and how she never gets tired and how she never makes a sound. Now, Ebony does do one other thing this issue when they're out scouting, and that's find a fire so Catwoman can go help. And some of the action shots in this comic, and in this sequence in particular, and also the final fight, are very cool and dynamic. At moments, they sell the concept more so than the story itself. No wonder you cats are always so quiet and contented, Ebony. With powers like these, there's no need to show off. You know you've got it made, and so do I. Now, one may be wondering, aside from this emotional conflict they're trying to set up between her father because of him disapproving of superheroes, what's the conflict inside of the narrative itself? What is she opposing? Well, Fleshcrawler is out there and he still wants to rob that bank, and his new plan is the same as the old plan. Joanie gets captured again, and because she doesn't want out her secret identity, she goes with them. And at this point, all of a sudden, Fleshcrawler has a different motivation. I suppose you're Mr. Fleshcrawler? Not to you, my dear. You may call me Fergo. I knew you were a model, but never expected anyone so bright, so lovely, so appealing. You were to be the linchpin of my plan to rob the Fifth Federal Bank, but that was before I saw you, before you won my heart. A bank is merely a bank. I can rob it at any time, but you must be kept safe, free from harm. You shall be my own personal treasure. Look, Fergo, I appreciate the compliment, but I'd rather eat worms than hang out with a dingbat like you. Dingbat? It doesn't have the sting in this situation. This feels like it came out of nowhere, but Fergo didn't really have much of a personality before this. You have spunk, spirit. I admire that. Be patient, my lovely. In time, you will learn to love me. Yeah, when Yasser Arafat gets bar mitzvahed. And witty as well. This took a turn in several ways. Not only does this infatuation thing just suddenly pop up, but now Joanie is a sassy pop culture reference cracking kind of heroine. So Fergo has a crush on me? Well, that may not be too bad. Maybe when he takes that fishbowl off his head, he'll turn out to be George Clooney or Russell Crowe. But since that's not very likely, I'd better find a way to get out of here. The walls are solid steel. Also, yes, if only he were handsome. There are many ways one could read this. One would assume it would be meant to be read sardonically, but there hasn't been enough given about her personality to be sure entirely if that's the way to read it. Part of this makes her sound like Silver Age Lois Lane. Joanie escapes, and Fleshcrawler is already gone, and no one calls him to tell him about her escape. The goons are implementing the plan. It's the same plan, only now it involves different people. They're breaking in at gunpoint with Ben and Raven in front of a crowd, and also guards. Joanie gets in even though her wig is already on, proving she can be identified by the average person even with the wig. Disguise useless. She tries to flatter the guy by saying that he looks like George Clooney. Not everybody wants to look like George Clooney, Joanie. Hey, why do we have to waste our redhead? She's just my type. Raven's not a redhead. Why does the dialogue say that? Is this a Marvel method moment in a DC comic? Catwoman is on the scene. As mentioned, she quips now. She's the sass queen, a Sasquatch. Didn't anyone ever tell you that robbing banks is a no-no? Or that threatening females is like totally impolite. It's that line entirely why she's had this voice the entire time. Committing crimes is like so totally rude. Can you believe that? She's like a real comic book heroine. Here's where I start reading comics again. Ben, take a photo or you're fired. The Fleshcrawler decides that this is taking too long and he leaves. Perceptive. So Catwoman pursues and cracks jokes, and one of them, it pretty much gives away that she is Joanie. The way she talks about their relationship, it makes it clear. Guess she has to kill him now. In my favorite line of the whole comic, he calls her repartee witless. Hear, hear. I only wish he was taking it back from the earlier line, like referencing the fact that he had called her witty before, and now saying that actually she's not, but it's still there. You're not much of a talker, are you, fishbowl head? He tries to ditch her, but cats always land on their feet, except for the times when they don't. She also said earlier that she doesn't have 9 lives. That's just a myth, but how would she know that? You never know until you try. But one thing we learned earlier was that cats never get tired, so she's able to wear him down and slash him. Hi, Benny. Did you miss me? Funny. I can't think of you as my pet anymore. In a way, you're more like my sister. Is she? And so life returns to normal. Minus a tease for the overarching villain for these stories, and there's a news broadcast playing that calls Fergo a menace. Was he a well-known villain then? It wasn't ever really made clear. Lots of details just kind of floating. But back to the status quo. Raven continues to be sexually harassed at work. The agency now wants Catwoman to model. They need pictures of Catwoman. And Joanie's dad still hates her job. But at least she's not a superhero. There's a backup story, but we'll leave that alone for now. We're here for Joanie. She's mentioned in it, but it's more about Black Canary. This is an interesting one to examine because there are a couple ways to do so. One is as a reimagining of Catwoman, and the other is as its own thing. Either way, it struggles a bit. The story is very loose and light on internal logic, consistency, or compelling character motivation. Things are very basic and don't bear up too well under much scrutiny. Sometimes even within a few pages, things will be returned to but not connected. A good example of that is the "you're witty" to "you're witless," but no mention of the fact that it's a changed opinion. There are moments where the art and dialogue don't fully connect, like Fergo saying to drive to the bank, where the panel looks like he's already there. There is a fun energy to some of it, and some Todd reaction movie energy, and the look is sleek and cool, even if not too different from Catwoman's past appearances, minus the giant claws. On the Catwoman front, the connection feels tenuous. It doesn't really feel like it has the energy of a reworking of Catwoman, despite the fact that she gets her powers from a cat. Instead, it feels more like a combination of Spider-Man and the Flash, with maybe a dash of Vixen. Taking it more from an actual direct getting powers from a cat perspective is fine, but it always comes across like those elements are there because it is meant to be a Catwoman book. The cat theme comes across as a bit forced. The cat could have easily been removed from this book and she could have gotten her powers somewhere else and little about the story would have changed. And the tweaks would have been minimal, just a little bits of the dialogue here and there. There is one moment where they play with it on that deeper level, and that's where she's being catty to her coworker. Actually leaning into that, making her a bit more of a confrontational person, could have strengthened that connection and been a bit of a fun play on the concept. It is interesting because Batman Returns did a similar traumatic evening kind of changes her and there are cats all around, but the shift to Catwoman felt more psychological, whereas here Joanie is a bit of a flat person. She expresses whatever sentiment is needed for the scene, but by the end of the book she doesn't even necessarily feel like she did at the beginning, and not because she grew, even as its own thing. If you take the reworking DC's Catwoman element out, she's still not the strongest character. She morphs from scene to scene, from seeking meaning to these powers were given to me by destiny to I've got it made, from seemingly yearning to be taken more seriously to seeking her father's approval to being a quipping queen. Now, not all of these elements needed to be disparate. In fact, there are ways that they could have been tied together. But as mentioned, everything is a bit less connected, and so you have scenes or characters who feel like they could be cut entirely. Ben could actually be entirely removed. That would have left more room for Joanie and Raven to be fighting with each other. That would have built them up a bit more. Maybe Raven could get that red hair that the one guy thinks she had. The whole Fergo loved her plot didn't really add much. It was more just an event that occurred. A lot of the events have that kind of energy. They happen, but then they don't really add much to the overall tapestry. Even her dad's scenes are repetitive. It's just not the most defined outing, and at points seems to be struggling to make it feel Catwoman-esque. It ultimately ends up feeling like a weaker version of some of the tangent outings. However, it is still interesting, and with just a few tweaks, one could really play with this version of Catwoman. There's a really fun character lurking in there, although she may not have the most heroic attributes, which could be a fun play on the fact that she's starting off trying to be a hero, whereas Catwoman starts off more villainous than shifts. A lot of how DC's Catwoman came together happened because of the evolution and the way things changed around her that necessitated her to also change. There is also the whole black cat thing. This comic is very much steering clear of connections to Felicia Hardy. It's not playing in that kind of realm, so it's not pulling from those elements because Felicia Hardy is also a thief and those kind of things. She has a complicated relationship with Spider-Man. In general, these Just Imagine outings are always interesting to me. But even in Marvel's main universe, they've created pastiche versions of some DC characters in a stronger fashion. But all of these are just my thoughts, and I want to hear yours. What do you think of this version of Catwoman? Does she feel like Catwoman to you or some other character? Would you like to see her revisited? What's your favorite Catwoman era? Please share all your thoughts down below. And while you're down there, please do all the YouTube things like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking Saturday spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.